My name is Susie Pappas, and today is June 27th, 2019. I'm interviewing Doreen Hermelin at the Max M. Fisher Federation Building in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. This interview is being recorded as part of the Women in Leadership Oral History Project. Do you give permission to the Leonard N. Simons Jewish Community Archives to publish, duplicate, or otherwise use this recording for educational purposes or for use as deemed appropriate by the archives?
I do.
The Women's Philanthropy Department of the Jewish Federation has had several names throughout its history. For the purpose of this interview, the questions will refer to it by its current name, but you can use any name that you're comfortable with. So Doreen, we're going to start. When and where were you born?
I was born in Detroit, Michigan in 1939, and I grew up in Detroit.
So where did you go to school, for elementary school and other schools?
Well, I first went to Winterhalter because I lived off of Dexter. And then when my parents moved when I was 9 years old, I went to Hampton. And then I went to Hampton, then I went to Mumford High School because that went to the 8th grade. It was a school that went all the way to the 8th grade. So we started high school right from elementary school.
Okay.
And I went to Mumford.
So how was religion observed in your house when you were growing up?
Well, it was observed quite nicely. My parents belonged to B'nai Moshe when I was a child, and I went to Sunday school every Sunday. And then later on, we had to go a couple days during the week as well. So I went to, and I would sleep at my grandparents' house a lot on Saturday nights because they lived on Lawrence, which was right down the street from B'nai Moshe. So my father didn't like to drive me in the morning on Sunday morning. So I spent many nights on Saturday nights at their home. And then I walked down.
Who were your grandparents? What were their names?
Shane. Munis and Munis Shane and Grandma Shane.
Okay.
Miriam Shane.
Okay. So so you were conservative? Was it called conservative?
Oh yes, it was called conservative, although they sat separately when I first went to B'nai Moshe. The men sat downstairs and the women sat upstairs.
Interesting.
But then they decided, they finally stopped being quite so orthodox and became more conservative, and the women and the men sat downstairs. But we didn't sit at the same side sometimes. Later, it took a while before we all sat together.
Okay. So when you were growing up, was philanthropy important to your family?
Yes, it actually was, I believe. I mean, because I was thinking about that when we had the question, because my father, well, every Sunday, the rabbis would come to the house.
Oh.
When we lived in Sherwood Forest, the rabbis came every Sunday. And my father always let them in and had good discussions with them. I don't know what they talked about. I didn't go in the room, but I knew they always came on Sundays. So he did involve himself with philanthropy besides the synagogue. And to the synagogue, he was very philanthropic. I mean, there's a statue on the top of of B'nai Moshe to this day that my father had donated to the synagogue after he helped build the education building. The synagogue was a separate building, and then they had an education built later. And my father, at that time, there was just 2 or 3 families who had money, and my father was one of those families. And they helped build the education building to the right of the synagogue. And there's a sculpture that was on that building that he moved to the one on 10 Mile Road. They had moved to 10 Mile when they built the building on 10 Mile Road.
So, okay, so when you were growing up, B'nai Moshe was near where you lived,
Yes.
near Sherwood Forest, or
No, on Dexter.
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 And then
I
they
lived on
moved
Dexter.
to Oak Park.
Yes, but I wasn't a member there anymore. Because when I married David,
Yes.
I went to Shar Tzedek with him.
I see.
But on the high holidays, I always went back to B'nai Moshe to see my parents.
Okay, so
We used to walk from B'nai Moshe to Shar Tzedek on
what's
Dexter.
in the B'nai Moshe building now in Oak Park? Do you
In
know?
Oak Park? It's still a synagogue.
It's still a synagogue?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know they have one out in West Bloomfield too, B'nai
Well,
Moshe.
I didn't realize they closed the one in Oak Park.
I think they did.
They might
But
have.
anyways, that just shows how the
Because
community
because it has
moves.
changed. But I have not been into the one. Are you sure they don't have the one in Oak Park anymore?
I'm pretty sure.
They probably don't. They couldn't afford to do that, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I was...
So once you were married, you became a Sherazetic member.
Right.
And you raised your children in Sherazetic.
Yes, I did.
Yes. Okay, so...
But I went to B'nai Moshe every Yom Kippur. I walked from B'nai Moshe to Sherazetic to see my parents.
I know before you became involved in women's department or division, you were involved in some other organizations. Do you remember which ones they were?
Well, I was involved with ORT for many years, but I think it's about the same time. Mm-hmm. I think I was involved in ORT at the same time, but David was involved with ORT, so I was involved with ORT as well, probably
Right.
before Federation. And then I went up and became the president of ORT nationally.
But didn't you also, I remember
NCJW was one of the organizations I loved and was
didn't
involved
you do
with.
stuff with the orchards?
The Orchards was part of NCJW.
Okay, can you tell us
Yes.
about that a little
Well,
bit?
the Orchards Children's Services was a piece of NCJW. They had a program for boys who couldn't stay in their homes. They had some problems with both schooling and in their homes themselves. And we had a home for them, the Orchards Children's Services. Mm-hmm. And first we had a boys' home, and then a few years later, I became chairman of that program, and we opened a girls' home as well. So, and then we opened a camp for the summertime, so the kids would have someplace to go and something to do for the summertime. So I worked with the Orchards Children's Services for many years.
But then you came over to Federation.
Then I came over to Federation.
Do you remember who kind
but
of...
I don't think I dropped out of there completely.
No, I'm sure you didn't.
Yeah.
But do you remember who encouraged you or kind of led your way towards Federation?
I think Margie did. I think Margie got involved in
Margie
Federation.
Krasnick?
Yeah, I think she was doing the decorations and stuff for them. And being my best friend, I thought, I think I'll come and work in Federation as well. And David was very involved in Federation.
Right.
So, I mean, how could I not? So
It was
I really,
kind of natural.
It was sort of a natural thing to start working in Federation. And I don't think I started pretty much behind him or with him whenever we started at Women's Division.
Well, were you surprised or not surprised when they asked you to become campaign chair?
I wasn't surprised. I think I'd been working for a long time, and I had been fundraising for a lot of stuff. So that they asked me to be campaign chairman didn't really surprise me. I was flattered, and I was very happy to do it because I love the organization. I mean, you know, being in a lot of organizations as I was, Federation became my favorite, and I was very pleased when they asked me to be chairman.
So, do you remember any of the programs that you were involved in through Women's Division, or some things that you maybe led the way or you were involved in?
I'm trying to think. We didn't have that on the list before, but I had thought, so I hadn't thought about it. I was thinking about some other programs we'd done, but well, I know
I'm trying to remember
I know
back
our trips
then.
to Israel. I can't remember.
Well, we did like those
remember.
call-a-thons.
Yes, we did the call-a-thons. We started call-a-thons, but I don't think we started when I was there. We could have. I think we did. I think we did start around that time.
And we
I
had
remember
different
going to Israel
divisions.
Federation. I think Federation was my first trip to Israel with the women's campaign.
Oh, yeah.
We went to Israel the first time, and that was very, very special for me.
It really
It
was.
was a very, very special trip. And
So, how did your family feel about your involvement in women's department?
they were fine. Whatever I did, they never complained. I mean, David he encouraged me. He never discouraged me. And my family was fine with it. I never had a problem, really. They knew they went to school, and I went to organizations.
So, many women have referred to you. This is something that I'm adding now, so... Okay. Many women refer to you as their mentor. Who were your mentors?
Well, I think Carolyn Greener was one of them. I think that I'm trying to think. Carolyn was for sure one of them, and I'm so bad. Ruth Broder.
Mm-hmm. Ruthie was a campaign
chair before
yes.
me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of them.
Well, what
Dulcie was a chairman before me,
Yes,
too.
she was, sure.
She was a chairman before. And, well, there were so many. There were many before me because
So
I was.
what does it mean to you to be called a mentor? What do you think that means when people say Doreen Hermelin was my mentor?
Well, I appreciate it tremendously because I hated to speak. That was my hardest thing in the world, to stand up. When my knees were straight, my mouth stopped working. So for them to say I was a mentor, I'm very pleased because that was agony for me.
Oh.
I mean, really agony. And I'm glad I'm sitting because otherwise I might be quiet. It's really funny, but I had to learn to be able to speak with my knees straight. It was very hard for me. I was not happy. As good as David was on his feet, that's when I shut up. So
I guess that would be a major challenge you faced as campaign chair.
Yes,
and
that
as
was
president.
the hardest thing I faced as campaign chair.
So
I could solicit no problem, but having to make a speech was very difficult. But I did a lot of them, but of course I had David there. I would write a speech, and then I'd sit at the computer. He'd sit at the computer because he was a computer whiz, and I would read him my speech, and he would smooth it out and
tweak it
for me, and then it was perfect. Then it was happy.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So when you think back to your time as campaign chair and president, could you think back of any of your proudest accomplishments?
Well, I think we really encouraged people to do face-to-face solicitation. That was something I remember doing more then, finding that was the best way. Because, I started in Federation when I used to push my kids in a stroller and go door to door. Mm-hmm. Because that was a memory. I was thinking, Marcy was in a stroller and I was pushing her when we were doing campaign that long ago. And then when we started soliciting people, and I remember when I was campaigning, we said, please sit down with your prospect and talk to them face to face, because it's much better to give the conversation, the information, to somebody in person.
We did a lot of training, helping people to
Right.
learn how to do that face to face.
Right.
That wasn't important. That was a very important
Thing for everybody.
Yes.
It was excellent.
Yes. So, do you remember at the staff members that you worked with? Who was the head of women's then?
You know what? I can't remember names from yesterday.
Yeah, no, I can't
I'm so
remember.
bad.
I'm trying to remember.
And I remember so well the gal who was here, and I became very close to her, and we really were very.
Barbara Satinsky.
Well, Barbie was wonderful.
Lois Brown.
Lois was wonderful
Yeah.
too, but I was closer to Barbara.
Yeah.
And Lois was very good, and then there was somebody else with dark hair.
Remember Sally Krugel
Sally,
did it for a
well,
while?
Sally did it. She was later. Sally was
Okay,
I worked with
remember.
Sally. Sally, I worked in other organizations with her.
Yeah.
But then there was somebody else that we worked with that I became close to, and was trying to remember her name when I was thinking about it, and I couldn't. We'd look at the archives and find some of those names.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so why is women's philanthropy important to you, and how does it rank among the other philanthropic activities that you do, which are so many?
Well, I think that from the very beginning, I thought it was really, really important for a woman to get involved in philanthropy. And this helps the Jewish people here and all over the world. And that's what I feel it's so important for us to take that on as our responsibility, not just our husbands, but ours, or how we're living. But I think it's really important for women to realize that the Jewish world is our world as well, as far as it goes, is wherever people live, that it was really important that we should be the ones to take on that as well. I think it's been incredible. I've met women from all over the world, older women we've taken care of still, which is makes you so proud and so pleased.
Right.
That we don't forget anybody. And the women do that because we're women.
Well, then the next question is, do you feel women solicit differently than men?
Probably. I think we're not quite so harsh. I think we're a little softer.
A little more
More heart to heart.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we do. I think we sit down and we talk about the things, really talk about them. And don't say, oh, you should be getting this much money now. And we don't do that. We talk about the issues and what's important.
Exactly.
And then we do it as women.
So,
And a woman's important to give besides her husband. Even though if her husband's a good giver, a woman should have some claim in what she does for the
Absolutely.
community. I
Right.
think that's really important.
Everybody should have their own gift, should
Yes.
give their own gift.
Yeah.
So, do you remember when you were campaign chair and president, was there much interaction between the women's campaign and the general campaign? Or did we basically just do our own thing and...
I think we basically did our own thing. I think we did our own thing. I mean, the general campaign did the general campaign. We helped on the phone-a-thons and stuff too, but we did our own thing. We had our own cards. We covered all of our cards,
Right.
all the women's cards, but we might have done phone-a-thons at this, with them as well. But I think we pretty much did our own thing.
Well, did you feel that Federation valued women's philanthropy, women's department? Did you feel that Federation thought we were an important part of their...
I think so. I never felt that we weren't valued, because I think we turned in very good results at the end of the year, so they never didn't value us. I think we were valued.
I think so too. And do you have any specific hopes for women's philanthropy for the future?
Well, I think we've gone to the top of the I mean, we've got a president now who's president of the campaign in general, so we don't need to go much taller than higher than that, unless we get we can take a national president. But we've gone as far as we can go in locally.
Right.
And
right.
I think the fact that we just involve ourselves with the whole country, we really have made friends. I mean, I made friends in various cities from Federation, from missions we've taken together. And it's enlarged my world as far as my personal world. And I'm sure you have too.
Well, since you were campaign chair and president, you've taken on many different roles in the Jewish world. And before we even come to the end, I don't know if you want to talk about how maybe that was a stepping stone to some other things that you did afterwards.
Well, I haven't done a lot more things. I mean, the fact that I went to become the national chairman of ORT was a biggie. I mean, David was involved with the ORT, and then I stepped into his shoes and took over that for him, and then I became national chairman, and it meant a lot to me, and Federation taught me so much about it. That's what I learned so much at Federation, about how to raise money from different people and how
That's
to do
what women
things.
say. That's what the women I've interviewed have said a lot, that being involved in women's department, women's philanthropy, was such a great leadership development course,
Right.
for
Just-
them.
And I agree. And I didn't know anybody said it too, but I'm sure they would, because we learned so much. We learned soliciting here. We learned how to talk to people and to raise money from them without, and doing it in a nice way and able to make a difference. And we made a difference here. And wherever we've gone, I think the women have made differences in the things they've done.
Absolutely.
And I've made wonderful friendships here too, which is great.
Very important.
Because that was, we change the ages between the younger and the older. It's really great.
So is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to cover about your involvement through women's department?
Oh, I'm very proud of the fact that my daughter has followed me. That's made me very, very proud that she's come up and she's done what she's done. I mean, it's been beautiful.
Marcy Orley.
Marcy Orley has done what she's done in the Federation and the community, because
that
she
is
followed
wonderful.
my footsteps, which I followed David's footsteps, really.
Right.
And it's really, really nice. If more of my kids lived here, I'm sure they'd be doing more of it as well. They live away, but they're also involved in philanthropy. My kids are involved in philanthropy all over the country, because they live all over the country.
I think Marcy really learned a lot from you and has done a lot for women's departments, so that certainly is something that you can feel very proud
Yes,
of.
it was very cute. I don't know if this is me, but Marcy and Matthew and Matt Lester became chairman together, and at the time that was my significant other.
Oh, yeah.
his father.
Yeah.
So the two of them became very good friends, and they became chairman together.
And you didn't talk about the fact that you also were general campaign chair for a little while.
For a little while I was.
And I don't know if you remember who was your campaign chair with you.
Yes. Yes, I remember who it was. It was Norman. Yeah, Norman was we were chairman together, right? I remember he was.
Yes.
Yes,
So
he tolerated me having a woman as his co-chair.
no, he liked working with you a lot.
He's a
so
terrific person.
so you were able to transition from women's to general and then to national leadership.
Yeah.
So women's did do a lot for you.
It did
Well,
a lot.
before we end, is there anything else that you'd like to cover?
To cover, I think that probably I could just thank Federation, because they helped me grow as a person who was able to do these things I would never think I would have done as a young woman. I didn't have a job. I didn't work. I started raising my kids as soon as I got married and had them. So I never worked, but this was to me an incredible growth to be able to do the things I did, and gave me tremendous confidence to go out into the world and do what I had to do and wanted to do. And that was really it was a job for me. It really was, because it meant a great deal. And nobody gave me a paycheck, but the check they gave me was very good emotionally.
You did a great job.
It was emotionally it was great for me. I loved the connections to the people, because I'm a people person, and I loved what I was able to do. So it gave me a great deal sense of pride.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming in and talking with us
Oh, you're very
today.
welcome. Thank you.